Welcome to Podcast 360, powered by the Podcast Academy. In 3 questions, answered in 60 seconds each, you'll experience a 360-degree view of podcasting and the people who are building out the industry. Company founders will take turns sitting in the seat of both guest and host, creating a chain of podcast knowledge and perspective. These conversations are going to get down to business quickly. Each host will ask their guest 3 questions, and they will have 60 seconds to answer each one. You'll hear the timer counting down their final 15 seconds. At the end, the guest will choose a topic to revisit and dig into a little deeper. Let's meet our experts. Today's host is...
Hi, I'm Arielle Nissenblatt, founder of EarBuds Podcast Collective and community marketing manager at Descript. You may have heard me last week when I was interviewed by the Mashup Americans co-founder, Amy Choi.
And who's in the hot seat as today's guest?
Hi, I'm Steph Colbourn, CEO and founder of editaudio, which is a full-suite podcast production company entirely operated by women, trans, and non-binary people. We operate out of the US, UK, and Canada. We make branded content for people like Google News, Harper's Bazaar, Stack Overflow, and we also make our own editaudio originals, 2 of which just won Signal Awards.
Before we dig in, we ask our guests to lay out 2 truths and a lie. Our host will guess which is the lie. We'll find out the answer together at the end of the conversation. But our host will have an opportunity to change their answer based on what they learn from our guest. Or they can stick with their first intuition.
Here we go.
Steph, thank you so much for joining Podcast 360 as my guest. It is great to have you here.
Thank you.
We kick off every episode of Podcast 360 with a round of 2 truths and a lie, where you provide us with 3 facts about yourself, and I will guess which one is the lie. At the end of this conversation, you'll tell us the correct answer. Are you ready?
I was born ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so
What you got?
my 3 facts. Number 1, I once had to battle a moose on a bridge for space. I was in the Yukon and I had to get home and the moose was blocking the bridge. I would like to just remind everyone that I am Canadian.
I was going to say it.
Mm-hmm. Number 2 is that I have a black belt in martial arts, specifically Taekwondo. And one time I throat punched someone at a bar and they went to the hospital and I had to go to court because it was like a weapon, you know, like when you have whatever. Mm-hmm. And
Whatever.
Number 3 is that Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek, lovely human. One time I was flying home from Philadelphia and both his father, Eugene Levy, and his mom were on the plane. And I sat beside Dan Levy's mom and we talked about gay things. And I ended up making her cry on the plane, talking about how beautiful queer representation is in Schitt's Creek.
Oh, my God.
You're welcome.
Okay. Those are awesome. I do have a guess. I'm going to make this guess, which is that I think that you are very talented at Taekwondo, but I don't think you have a black belt. I think you have whatever the step down from that is. I don't think you made it all the way. And that's not because I don't believe in you. It's because I think the other 2 are extremely believable. And that's my guess, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay, but I don't say whether it's right or wrong.
You don't say anything.
Okay.
That's what I believe your lie is, and we'll find out the truth later. Okay, Steph, now that you just told us 3 anecdotes about your life, one of which I believe is a lie, we're going to get into some more about your life, but this is going to be more on the professional side. How does that sound?
Lovely. That's why I'm here.
Here we go.
Okay, so I would love to start with the following question about your workplace culture. I know you speak a lot on social media about your core values, what makes your company your company. So in 60 seconds, can you tell us your core values that help you run your company in a way that you are proud to run your company?
I can try. I went to school and I worked in audio production and I just saw that like all of the studio spaces and the podcast industry as a whole were not very welcoming for people that weren't just cis white men. So once I started getting the opportunity to hire people, I made it my number 1 goal to try to like hire people and bring them up into jobs into my industry, our industry. So we are entirely owned and operated by women, trans, and non-binary people. We try to do like a lot of mentoring stuff with people that are coming up in the industry that may feel othered. And we do a lot of community initiatives too. And our whole company is funded by our for-profit work. So we don't have any investment funding or anything like that. We take the money from our for-hire work and put that into making edit audio originals with people that we think should be more represented in the podcasting space.
Wow, perfect timing.
Thank you.
I love that, Steph. Thank you so much for sharing. Can you briefly tell me about one of the originals that you've made and how the idea came about?
Yeah, we have an original right now that just won a Signal Award, 2 Signal Awards, Best LGBTQ Show, and then also the Listener's Choice Award in the same category. And it's called Rebound Revolution. It is a podcast that we make in collaboration with The Cube, which is Anna Deshawn's company. And we were just chatting one day about how amazing like women in sports are and how there seems to be at least a little bit with the NCAA championship last year and, you know, Brittany Griner returning this like bigger push to like understand why we're not giving them the same standards that we give male professional athletes. So we made this podcast and I was just like really excited. And then because it's like a women's basketball podcast, it is like very inherently queer and very amazing. And I love it. So that's one show. And we partnered with Anna on that. And then we also hired the host who's amazing. Her name's Dr. Money. She's like, honestly can school anyone in basketball knowledge, but is also just like the most excitable, lovely human.
Love that. Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about that. I have another question for you that I would like for you to answer in 60 seconds or less. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so I know that Edit Audio goes to a lot of events. You often have booths at a lot of those events. How do you decide which events are worth your time, and how do you measure ROI? If at all?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. The answer is that we don't really measure ROI. Like previously, so for the last few years, we've been going to events just to get our name out there and have people like recognize our branding and see us. And it's also an opportunity, since our company is all distributed like across 3 countries, for us to get together and different groups of us. I do think recently, now that the industry is in a little bit of a financial struggle, we've started to be like, okay, what's our goal going into this? Like our goal is to get one community person's contact, like someone we could do a community event with, or a future like organizational, I don't know, mission alignment type thing. And then the name of someone else that we could potentially do like a branded content work deal with. So those have been our 2 goals. I do not track them very closely because I totally cannot remember what happened. But also at the end of each conference, we usually bring in a booth and record a bunch of questions with people who are attending the event. And then after, we compile a few little mini episodes in a season around the event so that everyone can like hear each other's answers. And that show is called On the Road.
I love that. I love that show. And I also really like the branding behind all of your cover art.
Podcast 360 will be right back after a quick break and a word from our sponsors. And now, back to Podcast 360.
Can I ask you about your cover art and your general design for my third question that I would like for you to answer in 60 seconds or less?
Yes.
How does that sound?
Yes.
Okay, so here's my question. Website design, branding. How did you come up with all of that for Edit Audio? What was the intentionality behind it? And where do you feel it is taking you? What vibe do you think it's giving off?
Okay, big questions.
Because Edit Audio is lowercase.
It is.
I think that's important to mention. So tell us the vibe behind that.
Okay, so first of all, I do think I like kind of fucked myself by making the URL when I did. I thought it was so clever. It's editaud.io. So like if you zoom out, it's Edit Audio, but because of the .io, people like often are like editaudio, you know, like just like all these like weird makings of it. So that was kind of an issue. But because of that, I was like, oh, I'm already trying to be like kind of cheeky, different, whatever. And I didn't want to put out like an ugly website. I think there's so many ugly podcasting websites. And I didn't want to do that. And I am very fortunate that one of my very good friends, Matthew Famularo, who's amazing, is a really good designer. And we worked together doing the website, figuring out like what it needed to be content-wise, what story it was telling, what kind of look that it would give. And I really liked this retro sort of feel about editing tape and like syncing tape.
The wheels are turning.
Yeah, it's like gritty and stuff, but it's also like approachable and cute, I think. So that's the story behind that. He really helped that come to life.
Well, Steph, thank you for answering those 3 questions for me. Thanks for giving us a little more insight into Edit Audio, editaud.io. Love it.
Thank you. Something that also is important to like our company mission is that the Equality and Audio Pact has come back and we're making it a more global initiative. And so I am heading the North American division of the Equality and Audio Pact. So if you have any equality questions about the industry moving forward, hit me up.
Love that. Let's take a step back and define that. What is the Equality and Audio Pact? Where did it come from? And what is behind the resurgence of it, the reinvigoration of it?
So the Equality and Audio Pact happened during 2020. It was created by Renee Richardson, and it was just a way to sort of align people and companies in the industry to do better. We noticed that there's a huge gap, like there's huge pay gaps across genders. There's huge discrimination things happening in studios, and people just are not only not getting hired, but are also not advancing in certain roles. So it was a pact that was sent out to everyone. A lot of big companies signed on, like Spotify was on and Amazon and such. It ended up being a lot of work. And so I think things sort of fell apart after that. It started with 5 initiatives. The first is to pay interns, so there's no longer unpaid interns. The second is to hire people of intersecting identities that are minorities. The third is that if you release gender pay gap reports, to also release race pay gap data as the same thing. The fourth is to no longer speak at panels or at events that are not representative of the cities and spaces and industries that they are portraying. And then the fifth is to be transparent about who works for you and your company, as well as their role and position. And if they're like full-time, part-time, contract, whatever. So those were the 5 things. A bunch of companies signed on to that. It ended up being a lot of work and sort of took a back seat for a bit. And then Arielle and Laura Blake took it up last year, 2022, 2023. Couldn't tell you. Maybe this year? When was London Pod Show?
That just a few months ago, May 2023.
All right. So in 2023, Arielle and Laura Blake took it back up with Renee's permission and have been making steps to make it more global. So we have heads in each continent right now, and we've been meeting to just sort of reword some of those pact initiatives and do a few more things. So there'll be a lot of things that we want to do, but right now we're really focused on just like aligning everyone and making sure that we have the support that we need to make the changes happen.
Awesome.
We've also reached out to every organization that signed to make sure they still want to be on it.
And yeah, a little pressure is a good thing.
We love pressure.
If folks want to learn more about the Equality and Audio Pact, where should they go?
You can go to equalityanaudio.com.
Not .io, not edit.
Not editaudio.io.
Awesome.
Here we go.
Steph, I believe it's time for you to reveal your lie to me. Let's recap your 2 truths and a lie. First was that you once vied for space on a bridge with a moose. Mm-hmm. The second is that you throat punched somebody because you are a black belt in Taekwondo and that person had to go to the hospital and you had to go to court. And the third is that, why am I forgetting the third?
I sat beside Dan Levy's mom and made him
because
cry.
I believe it so much. The third is that you sat beside Dan Levy's mom and you had a beautiful gay conversation. I believe that the lie is the second one. I believe that you are lying about having a black belt. Where do I stand?
You are correct.
Was I spot on?
Well, no. So I do have a black belt in Taekwondo, but I have never I've never made someone go to the hospital. I've never been to court.
But did you throat punch somebody?
I have punched a gentleman in the throat.
Good.
For being ungentlemanly. There you go. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you for being a great guest. If you've enjoyed listening to Steph's insights, you will find her sitting in the host chair on next week's episode, where she will get the chance to interview another influencer. Steph, can you let our listeners know where they can find you in the meantime? Let us know any social handles, websites, or any shout outs you'd like to give.
Yes, you can find me by emailing me at steph@editaud.io. You can find Edit Audio on every social platform at just Edit Audio. Sometimes it's editaud_io. And shout out to all my amazing team and to anyone else who's working to make this industry a little bit better for us. I think you're cool.
Thank you, Steph, and thanks to the Podcast 360 team for having me.
Here we go.
Thank you for listening to Podcast 360, where you experience a 360-degree view of podcasting. Special thanks to the Podcast Academy and DCP Entertainment. Follow us on social media at The Ambies, and at DCP Official on Instagram. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.